Jesus Christ, guys. Okay, so let's talk about some movies. Let's dig in to the latest from Vinegar Syndrome, the world's greatest boutique Blu-ray distributor service. Holy shit! Like, I mean, I realize it's the halfway to Black Friday sale. You're gonna get a lot of stuff. This is gonna be technically 4 videos long. We've got all of the just package releases, the stuff that came with my subscription, which of course I highly recommend. We've got the unboxing, which was the previous Vinegar Syndrome video. After this, I have the VSA releases, which there's 2 of those, plus a little bit of spice for that video. And then, of course, beyond that, we have the AGFA release. Jesus Christ. Oh my god. Like, I'm glad I have all these movies, but let's just dig into these because it's going to take 10 years to get through. No funny, like, opening sketches or anything. We're just diving right the fuck in. And we're gonna do this in a very specific way. I'm going to review these and rank them at the same time. So we're going to go in order from worst film to best film. What do I like? What do I love? What do I not particularly care for? Let's talk about it. Now, with the exception of Rad, these are all MGM titles. Things to note about the MGM titles. I'll just pull this out. So if you look at the severed arm disc, this is going to be the same for all of them. The back menu junk is totally different. Not totally different, mildly different. The special feature information is down here as opposed to on the side. Not a big deal or anything, it's just a difference to note. Also, we got kind of mixed messaging on this one. It's either having to do with MGM or it's just something they're doing moving forward with all Blu-ray releases. I don't really care, so I haven't actually done the research, but no DVDs, just Blu-rays. So that's interesting. Obviously Rad, since it's a 4K UHD release, is the 4K UHD plus the Blu-ray. By the way, I was not able to review the 4K UHD disc because I don't have a 4K player, so that sucks. So let's start with the absolute bottom of the barrel of all these releases, the Immortalizer.
She's what I've always wanted.
And I'm going to say this right now, this is easily the worst of the bunch because, in my opinion, it is the only bad film. So let's just dig in. The Immortalizer follows a couple of pals and their dates who are kidnapped and must contend with a mad scientist and his gaggle of helpers, including some delightfully skeezy mutants, all in a really uninteresting house acting as a medical clinic in some random suburban neighborhood. There they must face the horror of the plot of Get Out being done very, very poorly. Despite featuring some really solid makeup effects, you can only coast so much on that. Between the bland characters and long stretches of characters just kind of wandering around, it's just too much of a chore to be fun. The fact that it feels like a Reanimator ripoff just adds to the issues, because it just makes me want to stop and watch Reanimator.
Yeah, I guess I'm in it too deep now.
And here's the thing. It's not technically like an all-out Reanimator ripoff. It's really just little things about it, specifically the glowing green vial and some of the ways that the way that the mistakes create these very violent zombies. That's really the long and short of it. You also do get a young scientist, but that's totally unrelated, really. But it feels like just Reanimator with a slightly different plot, less production value, and less one really good director. Joel Bender is no Stuart Gordon. Shock and awe. As you can see here, nice slipcover, very nice little, oh, that raised text, back here you also get the raised lady and the raised syringe and the raised text, which is all very good. This is a very cute looking cover. I really like the alternate artwork on the disc. Of course we get the single Blu-ray disc, and then the artwork from the slipcover on the other side of the insert there. Perfectly good packaging, just, you know, kind of a shitty movie. And don't get me wrong, there's some good stuff here. The gore really is very well done. There are some really good gore moments. There are some funny moments. There are legitimately some humorous tidbits here and there. I just don't think it works as an overall film. I think that if you took all of the good bits and put them together, you might have something. You'd have to, of course, add 80 minutes to make it a proper feature, but, you know, there is quality there. There are good ideas. It just never really gels. It never feels like a proper film. It feels like it never got past the rough draft before they started production. And that's too bad, because there's a lot of talent on display, and also a lot of not.
That was enough to knock out 20 men.
So let's talk about the extras. A Philosophy of Light is a 10-minute interview with director of photography Alan Queso, wherein he talks about developing his eye as a cinematographer, dealing with the logistics of a low-budget film, and working with Joel Binder, among other things. It sounds like the film was a lot more fun to make than it was to watch. Meanwhile, Making a Crazy Movie is an 8-minute interview with editor-turned-director Joel Binder. He talks working with Otto Preminger, the aforementioned Alan Queso, and the general production of a low-budget horror flick.
It's just got a strange quality to it.
He also mentions that he likes that the Immortalizer is, quote, a little long. And, well,
I disagree.
I appreciate how strange the Immortalizer is, and I certainly liked elements of it, but in the end it's just a slog to sit through, especially with how bizarre it is. It should be a barrel of laughs, but I was just really bored. So this is one I can't recommend. You know, the extras don't make it worth it. It has some, again, great packaging. If you're in it partially for the packaging, sure, this is really solid. I love this back bit with the chick running away from the giant needle. I think that's really fun. It denotes a film that is better than this one. So, yeah. So let's just move on to the next one on my list. This one is really good, and honestly, it's a bit of a tie between this and the next one. I think they kind of pro and con each other to a nice, safe middle ground. Both are really good. I enjoyed both. I will rewatch both. But I decided to put Blood Games in this spot because it just didn't jive with me as well as the next film did. And I think a lot of that has to do with just what I was expecting going in. With this cover, I kind of expected like a slasher movie. I don't know, it just looks very dark and menacing. And when I look at it now, I can kind of see, okay, the girl has a baseball bat, all the other girls have weapons. It's obviously it is more obviously a revenge film on when you actually know the context of the cover. But as it is, even the opening credits come off like a horror movie. This whole thing is put together like it's a horror film. And you know, if I had actually read the back, a shockingly violent revenge thriller. Yeah, that's what it is. It is a very violent revenge thriller. You actually get 3 different types of artwork for this one. You get obviously the slipcover, and then also if you pull out the insert, 2 and a 3. So lots of options for what to look at when you take it out of the slip, and I appreciate that quite a bit. Also an MGM release, so of course the menu's down there. So what is Blood Games about? A women's baseball team called Babe and the Ballgirls are hired to play with a bunch of rednecks for a daddy's boy asshole's birthday. After they kick some honky-tonk ass, they become targets of harassment that quickly turns deadly, leading to a fight for survival in the middle of nowhere. Can the ridiculously named Babe and her teammates survive? And if so, what will be left of them? This is shockingly sexualized for a female-directed thriller. Tanya Rosenberg directed this one, and it is honestly really shockingly good considering she never went on to do anything else. As far as I can tell, based on the interviews we'll get into, and based on my own little deep dive, she was an Israeli director who, came over and did some stuff, and this is the big culmination of all that stuff. And afterwards she went back to Israel and made some commercials, and that's it. There's nothing else. Even Brad Henderson, who is the guy who goes out and finds most of these people for these interviews and commentaries, could not track her down, which is shocking. He is a bloodhound, a bald bloodhound. He does a lot of great work and really gets us some amazing interviews, and I don't know what it is, but she's just vanished, and that's unfortunate because I would love to hear her story because she made a fucking good movie. Let's quickly talk about the extras. Playing Hardball is a 10-minute interview with Ken Carpenter, who plays the villainous Mino Collins, and who was apparently much younger during filming than I anticipated. Anyway, he doesn't tell us any nothing particularly enlightening, but he does talk a bit about Buck Flower, who's one of my personal favorite actors, so that was cool. He also confirms that Tanya Rosenberg was indeed a real woman director, not some David Dakota type pseudonym, and per his account, she was a treat to work with. Playing a Tough Babe is a 10-minute interview with star Laura Albert, who is now a very prolific stunt performer. This one is conducted over video chat due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as stated in the opening crawl, which is crazy for one reason. This is a May release, and according to the crawl, this interview was conducted in March. Guys, down to the wire much. Come on. This is it's really cool because you get a little behind-the-scenes glimpse at just what it takes to get these releases out. They are not something that they're like, they finish and they're sitting on for 6 months. Sometimes this is within just a couple months, maybe even a couple weeks of release, and that's staggering. It reminds me of Scream Factory just announced their Event Horizon Blu-ray, and they are still tracking down additional footage. Like, I just imagine it's a bunch of fucking Indiana Jones types out there, just like scouring the jungles for additional footage and for interview opportunities, just like hoping to get out alive. Seems fun. Seems more fun than I have. Anyway, as you might expect, the video quality here is absolute garbage, but the audio is perfectly fine, and even better, the subject is energetic and more than happy to talk in depth about the production. She gets into what led to her becoming a stunt performer, working with Tanya Rosenberg, and getting a Destiny reading. Anyway, it's a really good, albeit slightly weird, interview, so good stuff there. We also get a trailer, which is a trailer. So anyway, yeah, I recommend Blood Games. Actually, as I'm thinking about it, it's just getting better in my head, so this might actually rank higher upon a second viewing. I really enjoyed myself. It takes a minute to get going, but once it does, it's a really fun little ride. And I'm just going to say it, Laura Albert, if she had wanted to, should have been a bigger star. But I'm glad that she has a big stunt career. Girl did a lot of hard work on this one. Apparently this was the film that inspired her to become a stunt performer, which she talks about in her interview. Really, really liked it. Really solid film. Very entertaining. And I'm so glad that they brought this one into the light.
I bet you this old country boy teach them city bitches a thing or two.
Ron, you can't beat your own meat.
I can beat it better than you can.
Next up, The Severed Arm. Yes, sir. This is one that a lot of people were really excited about when Vinegar Syndrome was kind of pushing all their clues out. A lot of people were saying that it would be The Severed Arm, that it helps that it was also leaked. But I had never heard of this one. And fuck, man, this is really good. Let's get the plot out of the way real fast. A bunch of amateur spelunkers get trapped in a cave. After weeks without food, they give in to their needs and cut off one member's arm for food, only to almost immediately be rescued.
Whoopsie.
Their friend is carted off, vowing to never forget what happened, while the other men promise to never tell a soul about, well, what happened. Cut to 5 years later, and the men are being hunted down by a madman, merrily chopping off limbs in an apparent attempt at revenge. Who could it be? You'll probably not be that surprised. So this is interesting. This was 1973, and of course, Halloween did not come out until 1978, and then Black Christmas was, I believe, 1974. So this was very much a proto-slasher. It was not part of the slasher boom, but it does feel very much like one of those films. There's not a very high body count, so it definitely comes off as more of like a horror leftover of the late 60s, more than a slasher film, but it has the hallmarks of that genre, and you can definitely see that it's part of the kind of evolution of the medium as we reached into that part of film history. You're holding it, you're in your hands, something that is a, maybe not important part of film history, but an interesting relic of a point when we were transitioning. And that's pretty cool. What's also really cool is that it's legitimately a pretty fun movie. It is very simplistic and is not a terribly complicated film. And I can see some people be getting bored because it's not starring like a bunch of hot young people. It's not even particularly like filled with any likable people. But it is, it's sort of a very adult horror thriller. There are some interesting characters, but I found lead Mark, played by Paul Carr, to be fairly relatable as a protagonist, while veteran comedic actor Marvin Kaplan gets a lot of entertainment out of Madman Herman, who's a radio DJ in the film.
Don't lose too much of the audience.
Vince Martirano of Candy Snatchers fame is also pretty good, although not quite as much of a scene stealer as he was in that film. Not a bad cast. I don't remember much about any of the other characters, but those three stood out. Carr in particular, He's not like the best protagonist around, but he is, you know, he's kind of an everyman, and I think that, you know, that's pretty good when you're dealing with a very weird situation, like a guy running around chopping off arms. This is also obviously a very cheap production. If that bothers you, then what are you doing watching Vinegar Syndrome? These are the guys that put out Flesh-Eating Mothers. They're gonna do cheap. It's almost all they do. Come on. So let's look at the innards here. I love this slipcover. I like that it's bright yellow. I like the big black hand. Those are the two things that are kind of glossy. So really, really just like whew, in your face there. This is a really good cover. Really all the covers are fantastic this go around. Right there is some alternate artwork. And then inside you basically just get the slipcover art as well. Just a slight variation on that. And then of course just the single Blu-ray, no DVD. So pretty solid little flick. The script is really to the point. It doesn't waste time with a whole lot. It basically just goes, here's what you're in for. This is these guys. This is their general characters. Arm is gone. Oh, they're saved. Now everybody's gonna get attacked. That's the like that's it. It's just boom, boom, boom. We get through all these characters. Some die, some don't. Then we get our big reveal and a little twist. The end. And you know what? There's something to be said about economy in filmmaking. And as I said, it's before the slasher movement. I feel like the twist, which is pretty easy to see coming away, at least for the most part, you know, would probably be a lot more shocking at that time. But if you're paying attention, you'll have the killer figured out in no time. I had it figured out within the first 15 minutes. I mean, it was pretty obvious. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's still a good twist. And honestly, what they do with the twist, once you've gotten the killer revealed, is really good. It has a nice, like, it feels like a classically structured film. Or a classically structured story. Anyway, all the cheapness aside, it's ably handled by director Tom Alderman and DP Robert Maxwell, the latter of whom also shot Sweet Sweetback's badass song, The Astro Zombies, and The Candy Snatchers. Also, this is a great companion piece to kind of the lower end Jolly from the 70s. So if you want to do a nice double feature, you can maybe take any one of the films from the Forgotten Jolly box set, or, you know, something else, maybe something from Arrow. Pair it up with this sucker, you got yourself some quality double feature shit. For extras, we get, well, two of the folks who are still alive. Severing the Past is an 8-minute interview with Vince Martorano, who plays Bill Hale. It's not terribly in-depth, but it's also an interview with an old dude talking about a film from 1973. What we do get is a general sense of the circumstances surrounding the shoot, Vince's start as an actor, and his career afterward. A cut above the rest is a 9-minute interview with producer Gary Adelman, who also worked on Candy Snatchers. This one's pretty dry, but you get some nice specifics about the making of The Severed Arm, a memorable little moment with Marvin Kaplan, and a spurious claim about the film's music. Either which way, great stuff. Really enjoyed this one. It probably won't be for everyone. I think if you prefer the more 80s side of things, then 1990s Blood Games is going to be more for you. If you are a bigger fan of the 70s fare, which I am, then The Severed Arm, totally the right way to go. Of course, if you're that big of a fan, you probably already have all these because you're a subscriber, because you're smart. So what's even the point? YouTube's canceled. Next up, at number 2. Don't hate me. I know that a lot of you came here just for this. Don't be mad at me. It's just who I am as a person. And I really like Hal Needham. It's rad. So first off, Hal Needham. Not the best director in the world, but he did make arguably the perfect redneck movie in Smokey and the Bandit. That film is legitimately one of the best movies I've ever seen. I'm not being ironic. I'm not trying to be funny. I fucking love Smokey and the Bandit. And so, you know, the fact that this is his, by all accounts, second best movie certainly is good for me. And bear in mind, I really like the other two movies, and this is above them. So, you know, all you rad heads, get the fuck out of my face, okay? Fuck off. Rad follows young Crew Jones, a newspaper delivery boy and talented amateur BMX... When a huge BMX race called Hell Track comes to town as a means of capitalist takeover in this film, absolutely buried in product placement, Crew becomes intent on competing in and winning the race, with a little help from his friends. When I think about Rad, I think fun. I think of the phenomenal and cheesy Find Me an Angel sequence. I think of the intense final race at Helltrek. I think about how quintessentially 80s it all is. It's honestly one of the most 80s things I've ever witnessed, and as such, I think it's a must-watch for anyone who enjoys that aesthetic, and especially if that person loves a good sports movie, because goddamn, this is a fucking fun sports movie, follows all the right beats, does exactly what you want it to, and if that's what you like, if you like that type of structure, Rad is fucking rad, man.
I thought I heard it all, till now.
Now, real quick, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the slipcover. So, So, as far as the actual case goes, devoid of the slipcover, it's a 4K UHD, black case, standard issue. I'm not a big fan of these, but it's not a big deal. Inside, you get a rad poster, and you get two discs, the 4K UHD, and then, of course, the Blu-ray, which is what I watched. Real quick, to give you an idea of what this poster is like, because I feel like there's a lot of weirdos out there who's really interested. So this is actually kind of a cool poster. On one side, it's just rad, obviously. And then on the other side is the Helltrek. And that's just fun. I think that's fun. That's fun, you guys. If you don't think that's fun, then fuck you. And I've already fucking nicked that fucking poster. God damn it. And the, there's the insert. So nothing too crazy there. So, the slipcover. The holographic side is fine. I'm not a huge fan of these holographic covers. It's just because it's this, like, big thing that's, like, pasted on. And these are very easy to fuck up. So I'm not a huge fan of them, but they're also not bad. And for a movie like Rad, it actually kind of makes sense to have a holographic cover. I realize I know it's not technically supposed to be called a holographic cover. I can't think of the term, and I don't care. Now on the other side, we get this shit, which has this sort of like foil metallic. I'm not a printing expert. I don't know what it's all called. Again, I just don't care. I'm sorry. I'm a bad reviewer. So. As you can see with these like close-ups I'm showing you, it's really scratched up for something that's brand new, you know? And I looked online at the Facebook group, and a lot of people were having the same problem that I'm having, which is getting this disc fresh in its packaging and seeing it's just all kinds of fucked up. And Vinegar Syndrome knows this. Apparently they figured out shortly before shipping that these things are very easily scratched. You know, on one hand, I feel like that's something you should have figured out beforehand. I feel like with a release like this, you go through more testing and you really make sure everything's good enough for government work. And I don't feel like that was necessarily done. By the same token, I really don't want all of Vinegar Syndrome's efforts put into these releases because they're not the releases I really come to Vinegar Syndrome for. By also the same token, these are the kind of releases that will bring in more people to Vinegar Syndrome. There's a ton of people who join the Facebook group all because of Rad. There's a whole cult around this movie. So I can understand them putting a lot of effort in. At the same time, I don't necessarily need them to put all that effort in. It's a whole thing. But the point is, they put a lot of effort into this disc, and they made an honest mistake. And I've seen some people react with hostility. I've seen some people react in a very logical fashion. The way I see it, we all got the same problem. We all got a kind of scratched up, foily bullshit on the back. So who gives a fuck? Whoever's selling this on eBay is going to have to sell the exact same scratched up copy in varying degrees, obviously. Some are worse than mine, some are better. It just depends. Beyond that, if we're just buying this as collectors and lovers of film, emphasis on the lovers of film part, what we get underneath this slipcover is a fucking great Blu-ray release. So, what's the problem? I don't have a problem with it. I don't plan on reselling a lot of these. If any of them, right now I have zero plans of getting rid of any of my Vinegar Syndrome collection. So for me, it doesn't matter. I'm even keeping Vice Academy. That's how much I'm dedicated to this brand. And I fucking hated Vice Academy.
$27,000 worth. And I'm going to keep every one of them.
So that's kind of the general gist. Whatever.
Get this.
As far as the picture quality goes, this is another one that I feel like some people might harp on. So first off, all of these are great picture quality. That's why I haven't talked about it up until now. It all looks good. Like, what the fuck do you want from me? Like, Vinegar Syndrome's still really good at what they do. With Rad, it's shot on a lot of like high-speed film and what have you. It is a very grainy movie, especially the opening bits with the BMX riders. It's obviously shot on some really cheap stock, and that's fine. I don't care. But I think a lot of people, when they see grain, they think it's like artifacting or something. It's not. It's just grain. There's just a very heavy grain. Basically, I'm not going to go through a whole like course on film grain, but basically, higher speed film, larger grains inside. That's what you see is just like these little photosensitive grains of stuff, and those are what get exposed to the light. And the bigger, chunkier the grain, the more open it is to light. I don't know this is really hard to explain. So basically these big old chunks of grain show up in the final product because they're big old chunks. And if you have cheap film, often that cheap film is going to be very sensitive, grainy film. And then if you have really expensive film, usually, unless you're shooting in really dark areas, you're probably getting some really sweet, like 200 ASA film that does not really show any grain at all. And that's just what it is, man. In this case, it is mostly shot on a very grainy film stock. And so what you're going to get, if we're going to get the natural look, is a grainy image. And I don't think it's really that prevalent for most of the movie. I think most of the movie looks pretty sweet. But it's, it's there. It's also a Hal Needham movie. It's not going to look brilliant at all. I really love these opening shots where he was really loving this gradient filter on front of the lens. And I don't know why. It looks really stupid. And I'm glad that he doesn't really use it much more because it's a really dumb look. But the rest of the film looks as good as can be. I mean, it's a BMX movie directed by Hal Needham. And it looks as good as it probably ever could. Also, this was previously only released on VHS, so I mean, come on, this is a huge upgrade from the get-go. I really can't imagine what more fans could possibly want. The movie itself features a whole lot of great aspects. It is very simple. It's just a really dumb sports movie, but the BMX sequences are really cool. Even though the Hell Track one is certainly the most challenging sequence for them to have completed, I love the Find Me an Angel sequence. The Find Me an Angel sequence is absolutely my favorite part of the movie, even though like Lori Loughlin's stunt double's really obvious, and it's super obvious when the two of them are on a dolly kind of balancing on the bikes. You get this really low shot so that we can get Cruz's face and not his stunt double while also showing him on the bike. It's very obvious, but it's so fun, and the song is so good. I mean, the music in this whole movie is phenomenal. I mean, there's nothing to not at least like about this film. I think that it is more or less flawless as far as these movies go. Obviously, if it's not your aesthetic, then you're not going to enjoy it. But if you like these kind of cheesy sports movies, if you like the 80s, if you like BMX, I have zero issues with the movie. Like, it's really only that the other movie that we're going to talk about, which you already know, is a little better for me. It's more my speed. I think that anyone who buys this release, who likes this kind of movie, is going to be very pleased. So let's talk about the ample number of features. We get a new commentary with Bill Allen, who is the star, plays Crew Jones. It's a weird start with the strangest description of the TriStar logo I've ever heard.
The iconic unicorn, and I believe this is actual footage of the last unicorn trying to get on to Noah's Ark and not quite making it.
He mostly points out who people are when his stunt double takes over, and little production details like this kid wearing shin guards, that sort of thing. As the commentary goes on, there's lots of Bill just kind of watching the movie and pointing out the obvious for the most part, with the occasional trivia tidbit. It's not the best commentary around, but at the very least, Bill comes off as a pretty nice dude with a good sense of humor. Then we also get another new commentary with Talia Shire and her son, Robert Schwartzman. Yes, Talia Shire is in this movie. She plays Crew's mom. We'll get to that in a second. Talia had Robert with executive producer Jack Schwartzman, whose other kids include actor Jason Schwartzman and cinematographer of The Rock and Jurassic World, John Schwartzman, which, wow, what a family. It also explains why Talia Shire is in the movie. John, by the way, was pretty young during the filming and shot the opening BMX scenes. Anyway, it's a very nice, very personal commentary that's about as wholesome as the movie itself. Scanning through it, there's a lot of very obvious Arnold Schwarzenegger-esque comments that don't do much to help us understand the film, but honestly, it's just so pleasant that I don't mind. We also get an archival commentary with a bunch of big personalities: Martin O'Brea, Jose Inez, Martin Aparijo, Bill Allen, Bart Connor, Sam Bernard, Eddie Thiola, and Jeremy Mosier. Bill also uses the dumb TriStar joke here, so I guess this is like a long-term bit of his. I wish I could praise the first two commentaries, since that's new work put into this release, but this one's easily the best commentary of the bunch. There's lots of energy, no gaps, and lots of info about filming and stories from the set. Sometimes things get a bit raucous and overly jokey due to the number of people involved, and it's a little tough to tell who's talking sometimes, but that might just be my issue as a sociopath. Anyway, if you're a big fan of Rad and you haven't listened to this already, you will be thoroughly entertained. It's a really solid commentary. And I enjoyed it. It's one of those sort of just hanging out with the guys commentaries, and that's always fun. The Stuntman Directs is a 15-minute archival interview with director Hal Needham, with excerpts from the apparently upcoming documentary on Rad, a documentary that I am 89% certain, 98%, 100% certain is not coming out anytime soon. It's a great little interview with the man himself, really digging into the love for the film and a general history of its production and its release. Writing Something Rad is a 16-minute interview with writer Sam Bernard. He delves into getting Hal Needham on the project, the response to the film, its struggle for home video release, and more. It's a really good interview. Nothing staggering, but it gives you a nice little bit of some nice chunks of information. There's a 5-minute archival making of featurette, which acts more as a promotional video than anything else. It's a fun little look at production, and you get some actual behind-the-scenes footage, which is nice. Then there's an archival 11-minute video shot during filming with interviews including renowned gymnast turned brief actor Bart Connor, actor turned white-collar criminal Lori Loughlin, director Hal Needham, and star Bill Allen. Connor talks a lot about acting, which is interesting considering the subtext that it might be the next big thing for his career, and well, that didn't exactly pan out. Loughlin and Allen do the usual behind-the-scenes actor bit, mostly talking about becoming part of the project and who their characters are. Overall, I think out of the bunch, I enjoyed Hal Needham's kind of small chunk the most. He talks about how choreographing fight scenes is a lot like dancing, and that jives with me more than a bunch of actors talking about acting. Then we get 25 minutes of pretty recent archival interviews with a bunch of folks, including Bart Connor, several of the stunt writers, and Sam Bernard, with accompanying dandruff that the producer should really be ashamed of not noticing before the interview. We also get excerpts from the 25th anniversary event in Calgary. It was a huge event kind of dedicated to Rad. Lots of fans, lots of people really dedicated to this movie. It gets the idea across of just how important this is to a lot of people, so that's cool. Beyond that, we also get a music video for Break the Ice by John Farnham, and that was actually shot by John Schwartzman, which is cool since he would go on to be, pretty big DP. That's pretty nifty. Then there's a gallery of behind-the-scenes photographs. That's a slideshow that lasts like 3.5 minutes. It's fine. That one didn't really interest me that much, to be honest. And yeah, this is hell of a ride. Hell of a ride. You get the original trailer too, obviously. But anyway, great release. If this was a ranking just by like the amount of work put into a release and how fucking stellar it is, this would be the winner. This is an amazing release. I mean, what can I say? These 4K UHD releases so far really impressed me. Obviously, I really loved Taming the T-Rex. I really love this. Rad is rad. That's all I got.
Go balls, Rad.
Look, man, I am a simp for Paul Schrader. I love Paul Schrader. I think he's one of the best writers and directors working. Mishima is one of the best fucking movies of all time. Taxi Driver, of course, phenomenal screenplay. Light Sleeper is one of my personal favorites that no one ever seems to talk about. Guy's got genius for days. And Patty Hearst, while not his best film, or even, I would say, in the top 5, I wouldn't even say it's in the top 5, but it is a really, really, really good film. The plot is fairly self-explanatory. It tells the story of, Patty Hearst, the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst. She's a rich kid living with her boyfriend when members of the Symbionese Liberation Army kidnaps her and, through various methods, eventually turn her to their side in what may or may not be brainwashing. It's a true story. That's what you got to know. I won't give away the ending, even though you should know it. I don't know how famous Patty Hearst is with people these days. She's Patty Hearst. I don't know what to tell you. If you've watched latter-day John Waters movies, you've seen her. The first 20 minutes or so of this flick is a staggeringly great short film all by itself about the experience of being kidnapped and unable to see. Honestly, you could just show me that, and I'd put Patty Hearst at the top of the pile. It is a phenomenal start to this movie. Actually, I would even say that the film kind of, it doesn't fall apart, but it definitely takes a slight dive, slight spoilers, I guess, after Patty Hearst is kind of given more access to the group and is no longer an all-out prisoner. Up until that moment, I mean, it is super tense, visually arresting, has some really great ideas of like how to approach the idea of this woman who is basically just trapped in a closet for the first third of the film. It's beautifully done. After that, it's a little bit more standard, a little bit more just, this is the true story of, but it's helped by some really stellar performances. Natasha Richardson, who plays Patty Hearst, is perfect in the role. She just feels right. It makes me sad that this is kind of getting off topic, but if you don't know who Natasha Richardson is, she was a really great actress before this, but eventually she was the wife of Liam Neeson, and she died in a skiing accident, and it was very sad. She was very young. I think she was like 45 or something. And it just, it's one of those raw wounds in film history, because she really was a very talented actor. And, if you wanted proof, here it is. She's great. She's vulnerable. She's fierce. She has kind of a coyness to her at times when it's necessary. When she's scared, you feel it. When she's uncomfortable, when she's fucking up, it all just feels so natural and so perfect. We also get Ving Rhames and William Forsythe as members of the Symbionese Liberation Army. Ving Rhames is amazing. This is one of his earliest roles, and dude was hot. Like, look at this guy. This guy is, oh boy. William Forsythe, meanwhile, is a piece of shit and does blackface. And that's all you need to know. Watch the movie. There's also great cinematography from Boan Bazelli, only 3 films into his career, and who would go on to shoot Pumpkinhead, King of New York, Boxing Helena, and 2007's best film, Hairspray. Real quick, let's talk about the packaging. Great slipcover. There's the Patty Hearst poster. Got the symbol for the Symbionese Liberation Army on the back. Both those things I think everything, basically everything is raised on the slipcover. You get 2 options for cover art, what's on the slipcover, and then this kind of, okay poster. Pop! On the downside of things, there is a slight problem here. We only get 1 special feature. Well, okay, let me bring that back. When you do get a promotional stills gallery, I've made this apparent before, I don't give a shit about stills galleries, really. You have to put together a fucking stellar gallery for me to care about a stills gallery. So beyond that, we only get 1 special feature, and that is an interview with Paul fucking Schrader. So, here we go. On the one hand, it is Paul fucking Schrader. They got Paul Schrader. That's amazing. Brad, you're a god among men. I don't care if you couldn't find the broad who shot Blood Games. You got fucking Paul. You landed Paul Schrader. You hooked that sucker. You reeled him in. You got it done. Good for you. Great job. It is only 12 minutes long, which is more than enough for Paul to talk about a lot of things. It gives you a general idea of how he approached the script when it was offered to him, introducing the real Patty Hearst to John Waters, casting Natasha Richardson, the visual approach to the film, and other such info. It's Paul Schrader talking, which dude is looking a little iffy now, but he's still making great cinema. I mean, First Reformed was fucking banger. So, dude can look and sound as old as he wants, still rocking it. I do question placing him in front of the brightest fucking windows on the face of the planet, but that's beside the point. Overall, it's a good interview. Is it the best? No. Would I have liked more? Yes. Is it still Paul Schrader? Fuck yes. So, again, pros and cons. I feel like this is one of those things where I just really, because it's a Paul Schrader film, and it's the first time on Blu-ray, and it's probably not going to be put on Blu-ray anytime soon. I wish there was more to it. I wish there were some, more behind the scenes things, some interviews, maybe like a Ving Rhames or William Forsythe. I'm sure that they were reached out to and said no. And that's too bad, because I really just would have loved anything else. So that's small issue, is the fact that all we get is an interview with Paul Schrader. Ugh. So yeah, I love Patty Hearst. Really solid film. Beautiful to look at. Again, has some little issues about like in the middle where it's kind of readjusting itself after the very experimental opening. But I mean, it's just so fucking raw and impacting, and it moves along at a really good pace, and it's just a brilliant film. And so highly recommend Patty Hearst. Absolutely loved it.
I'm happy to have headaches, happy to be constipated, happy to be accepted rather than killed.
And honestly, aside from the Immortalizer, I recommend all these. These are great. So great job, Vinegar Syndrome. As usual, you did an amazing job. I will be talking about the VSA releases in the next video. Follow me on Twitter. Subscribe, you bitch. Like, ring that little bell thing, little shitty fucking bell thing. Comment with your thoughts on these releases, or if you like my face, I guess. Thanks to all my patrons. I've gotten a huge influx, well, like 3 or 4, but still, for me, a huge influx in patrons recently. I really appreciate it. You guys are baller as hell. And yeah, thanks so much. Until next time, go watch a movie.